Hello everyone, this is Huafeng Li. In this very short video, I'm going to talk about how to write a case study report in 3 steps. I'm going to using an example about balancing your work and study. Many of my students, they usually either have an internship or have a full-time job, part-time job, etc., right? So they are not traditionally full-time students. So they need to balance their work and study. Often the conflicts will emerge when they have schedule conflicts. They can't be in class on time, etc., right? So for example, let's define the problem. The problem is my busy work prevents me from focusing on my study. Now, I usually would suggest focusing the problem to a very specific level, as detailed as possible, so that it helps you to come up with your concrete solutions. So for instance, here we have 3 different solutions or alternative options to solve the problem. The first alternative is, since you are busy at work and you also need a lot of time to focus on your study, so obviously God is fair, everyone has 24 hours per day, so try to sleep less to keep both work and the classes, if that's what you want, right? So my personal experience is I did sleep less than 5 hours for more than a year or so. When I had my first baby, working as a graduate assistant and writing my dissertation. That's my second year PhD life. All right, so the bad news is I need to drink 4 to 8 cups of coffee every day just to survive. All right, we'll talk about the using different criteria, right, to evaluate this alternative. But this is the first one, try to sleep less. All right, the second one is take the class another time when my work schedule allows. Right, so that leaves you more flexibility, of course. But the bad news is if you need to graduate a little bit earlier or as soon as possible just to get a better position in the job market, then maybe you have to bear certain costs, right? And but definitely take the class another time is one of the solutions. And the third alternative solution could be reduce the workloads to excel in the class, or simply quit the job, right? So then you can be a full-time student to focus on your class, right? Remember, when we talk about to quit the job, you should see it from the opportunity cost lens, because when you pay for your class time, right? When you enter into a classroom, you need to pay for it. Every university charges you based on how many credits you get from them, right? So class credits based on hours, they are actually very expensive, much more than maybe the minimum wage or the low income pay from your current job. Okay, so think about this from the opportunity cost lens. All right, so now we have 3 different solutions to solve our problem. First one, try to sleep less. Second, take the class another time. And the third, quit the job. All right, so some of the criteria, these are examples. I'm not exhausting all the possible criteria that you can use to evaluate them, right? Some of this you may hold different opinions about what kind of criteria are more suitable in evaluating these alternatives. But here are some common what we would use, right? The first one is costs, right, or cost-benefit analysis, because you can quantify them and it's much easier for you to make a comparison. And the second one is personal energy, right? So it's very hard for you to quantify them, but maybe we can categorize them as like low, medium, high, etc., right? And that same rule applies to sustainability. Now we don't know exactly like the percentage or exact can be assessed to measure the sustainability, but at least we can categorize it into low sustainability, medium sustainability, or high sustainability, right? So then let's use these criteria and to evaluate all our options. All right, now we said we have three different options, right? So sleep less, take the class another time, and quit the job. And we also have three different criteria to evaluate all these options. So let's focus on using three different criteria on the first option, sleep less. So what's the cost of sleeping less, reduce less? No, we cost here, we refer to monetary cost, right? Not saying mental health, etc. So basically, you don't need to pay about anything, right? Sleeping less is just sleeping less, and you don't have to pay for it. But it requires high energy to maintain functional every day, right? And your personal energy requirement will be very, very high. And so then right, if you require a high energy but you get less time to sleep, which means the model is possibly low sustainability, right? It can't last for long, right? It's not good for your mental and physical health, etc. Okay, so now let's look at the second option. Take the class out another time. You don't need to pay, of course, but maybe even better, you can get some money back, right? Since you are not taking the class this time. And the energy, so that you can focus on your work, right? So we would say maybe medium level of personal energy requirement. And the sustainability, I think, is very, very high, right? It's quite sustainable. Not to mention, many universities now offer lifelong learning projects. So if you can't finish a certain class in a certain period, you can take the class another time and still have the opportunity to complete all the courses required for a certain degree. All right. And the last option will be the quit the job. The cost will certainly be very high if you live, especially for those who live paycheck by paycheck. You need to pay for rent and pay for food, etc. Right? So if you quit a job and without families or others' financial support, you just can't survive, right? So maybe the cost financially is quite high. So we will say quit the job definitely will result in high costs. And then the energy requirements. Now, since you quit the job, right, so it won't require very, very high energy to just focus on your study, right? It's unlike, you need to keep both work and classes by sleeping less, right? As compared to the first option, obviously the energy requirements is not as high as the first option. All right, so we'll just label this as medium. And for the sustainability, now since we said okay, quit job may result in high cost, right? So especially for those who live paycheck by paycheck, that may not sustainable. Maybe you have some savings can support you for a semester or so, but without further opportunity jobs, right? It's very hard for you to sustain this model as well. So we would say this is median as compared to take the class another time. All right, so this is the overall how you apply different criteria to evaluate different solutions to your problem. Now, what's the best option? There are two different approaches. Okay, so the first one we will say is a holistic approach or overall approach. You take all the considerations, all the criteria, and compare them systematically. So by looking at this, you possibly will say, oh yeah, let's say maybe take the class another time is the best option, right? Because it's highly sustainable, only require medium level personal energy and bearing no costs, right? So as compared to the first one and compared to the third one, and this one in the middle appeared to be the best choice. Okay, so maybe you should just choose this one, right? So based on the overall or holistic view, this is the best choice. Now it's the same thing when we choose a university, choose to admit a particular student, or you wish to support specific candidate, etc. Right? So based on different criteria, you evaluate all these candidates, then you pick the best one based on the holistic view. However, there's another way to do it. Right? If you prioritize one of the criteria and overweigh this one, and this criteria is so important to you that outweighs the other criteria. So, for instance, that's the cost. All right, and you wanna finish all the things together, right? You wanna keep the class. You also don't wanna lose your job, right? So then maybe sleep less is your best option, right? Even though this requires high personal energy and it's very low responsibility sustainability, but still this is your best option because you prioritize some of the criteria because you want to keep both, right? So that's just the reality. Let's say this, or if you prefer like the costs or other things, right? So it's just like when you have you are very popular on the dating market, for instance, right? So then you have three potential candidates approaching you, and you want to pick one, and but you feel like honesty or loyalty or kindness is the biggest thing, right? Whether or not the attractiveness or whether or not the rich or poor, these are the second tier criteria. You are not placed that much on these. The only thing you care is whether or not he or she loves you and are loyal to you. So that's the only thing you want to prioritize. Then based on that, you pick the best one. All right. So we call this a single criteria evaluation methods. All right. So you can as long as you can justify why this is the most important criteria and why that should be outweigh other criteria and why you make a decision based on this particular criteria, then you are fine, right? So to summarize, the first thing is that you need to identify the problem as specific as possible, because that's gonna help you to create different solutions. I only come up with 3 different solutions, but obviously you can have more, right? Potential solutions. You have more potential solutions, and then you come up with a set of criteria. Now, a set of criteria means you can have various different criteria. It doesn't have to be always 3 different criteria. You can have 4, 5, 6, etc. Right? So as long as you think these criteria are quite important in terms of evaluating your alternative solutions. All right. So, but commonly we would say whether or not it's cost effective, whether or not it's feasible, right? Practically feasible. So these are the things you possibly want to think about it, right? And then you apply different criteria to evaluate each of your alternative solutions. Then you make your decision. Now, when there's 2 different approaches. The first one is a holistic one, right? So that you can compare different solutions based on the evaluation by using different criteria, right? Take an overall and holistic approach. Now, the other approach to evaluate and make a decision about which one is the best option is based on a single criteria which outweighs the other criteria, as long as you can justify why this single criteria is the most important and why we should stick with this single criteria. All right, so we call this single criteria approach. All right, both approaches work. All right, no one is superior than the others. All right. Okay, I hope this example gives you a better idea about how to write an individual case study. All right.